All right, everybody, let's get started. Welcome to today's session. I'm Mike DiAgostino, the General Manager with Cyber Theory, and your host for today's webinar entitled Engaging CISOs with Effective Content. I'm really excited as this is actually the fifth session, I believe, in a series of webinars we've hosted over the past 6 months or so, all around the same theme, which is an attempt to educate marketing and sales representatives from cybersecurity vendor companies on how to more effectively pitch their offerings to specifically chief information security officers. And we've even covered a similar topic to today's, but that webinar was a bit more focused on actual messaging best practices, whereas this session will get a bit more detailed around actual content formats and a lot more. I'm joined by my colleague, Julie Jordan, Director of Marketing Strategy with Cyber Theory, along with our esteemed panelists, including Vlad Brodsky, the SVP and Chief Information Officer and CISO with OTC Markets Group, and Michael Bray, CISO with the Vancouver Clinic. Welcome, guys, and please quickly introduce yourselves for our audience today. Vlad, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Michael. My name is Vlad Brodsky. As Michael mentioned, I'm the Chief Information Officer and CISO at OTC Markets Group. I've been in the position for about 10 years at the company throughout various positions. We're in the over-the-counter equity space and financial services. We're part of the critical infrastructure, as much of financial services are. And my background is mainly in information technology, information security. And I also like to volunteer. Specifically, I've been on the board of New York Metro InfraGard for about 7 years until earlier this year. And I also speak at conferences. I do panels and generally try to keep myself engaged in the cybersecurity community.
Very good. And Michael, how about yourself?
Good morning. Hi, Michael and Julie and Vlad. So I'm Michael Bray. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the Vancouver Clinic. We're a full governing clinic. I believe we're the largest independently owned clinic west of Mississippi, if I understand it correctly. So we're privately owned. I handle the security program, establishing the program. I have an IT background, probably about 20 years or so. This role for the last 8 years as a CISO. And looking forward to talking today and talking about our experiences recently with the advancement and evolution of the vendor space with sales.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about some of those advancements, including AI, in a few minutes. But one thing both of you left out was that both of our panelists today are part of our esteemed Cyber Ed board community. Thus the logo in my background and Julie's background. For those of you that aren't aware, Cyber Ed board is the leading invite-only peer-to-peer networking group for CISOs and CIOs to connect, engage, learn, mentor, and overall advance their careers. Cyber Ed board members participate in various capacities with Cyber Theory. In fact, some members participate in similar exercises to this, which we refer to as perception studies, where we poll members to gain insight and feedback on vendor marketing and messaging, providing, I'll just leave it as very transparent guidance. And just a quick blurb on us or Cyber Theory. I think anybody that's attending today must know something about us, but just in case you do not, we are a marketing advisory and agency focused exclusively on cybersecurity and IT vendors. We sit literally at the intersection of cybersecurity, data, and marketing, and offer everything from go-to-market strategies and content development to in-market tactical lead generation and even sales acceleration. And last item for everyone that's attending, this session is being recorded, and you will all be notified when the recording is available. So feel free to revisit and or share with your colleagues. So we've got a packed agenda for the next 45 minutes or so. So why don't we just jump right in? We do have a list of talking points prepared for today, but maybe just to help set the stage, I've asked our panelists, Vlad and Michael, if they could just convey anecdotally some things that they've been through in the past, call it 3, 6, however long months, in terms of interactions with the vendor community, in terms of how they're being marketed to, how they're being sold to, and maybe the trials and tribulations of some of those interactions. So, Michael, you're actually first on my screen now. Do you have any comments that you could add?
Sure. I was trying to think about how I want to talk about all this. It feels like a Wild West. It feels like it's a free for all Wild West moment for sales. When they talk about cybersecurity positions, we don't have enough. I think there's 500,000 or 600,000 open positions in the United States right now. I think there was over 5,000 open positions in the state of Oregon in a briefing that I was at this Monday. It feels like, are they all in sales? I mean, are they all following the same playbook? So since the AI advancements with ChatGPT probably a year and a half ago, and especially in the past 5-6 months, they all seem to be following the same playbooks as far as how to contact us, how to reach out, how to use the use of AI and templates to craft their email communication, craft their text messages, craft their LinkedIn post. So it's kind of been quite interesting, but we're being bombarded is what it feels like. And so how do we politely manage these attempts to communicate with us and offer insight into their vendor products without overloading us? And it's just been very challenging for me personally and with my colleagues I'm speaking with on a regular basis about it. So I'm looking forward to today getting into the weeds a little bit more, got some ideas and some suggestions, folks, that might be, somewhat fair on both sides of the table.
Yeah, appreciate that. How about yourself, Vlad?
So I agree with Michael. Overload, I think, is the right phrase here. I've noticed myself that I've had to most recently turn off my LinkedIn notifications on my iPhone with focus mode during the workday because I'm being inundated with marketing messages, all types of messages on LinkedIn specifically. And LinkedIn was probably one of the only communication methods that I still had that could actually notify me without me having to open the particular mode of communication. And even that now is essentially gone. I have to turn off the notifications, and the reason is because marketing from mainly cybersecurity firms to me has gotten so overloaded, as I mentioned, that it's rather unmanageable at this point. And I've already had to turn off. Essentially, I ignore phone calls, incoming calls from on my work phone. Just because majority of folks who need me, they can reach me by other means. Emails are almost completely inundated with marketing. Because this is, I guess, what the vendors think is one of the better ways of getting to me. And there definitely needs to be a better approach. And we'll get more into this a little bit later, but there are better approaches. And we will talk about them. But the current method of communication, for me, really isn't really working.
Yeah, appreciate those comments, and that's definitely what we're here to discuss today. And this is similar feedback that we get with just about every of these webinars that we conduct. Like I said, this is a number into our series here, and I think one comment that always resonates with me from a prior session that we did where a chief information security officer said, my job is to manage the security organization for my company. It's not to evaluate vendor offerings, right? And I think that has just stood with me for the test of time. And I think that's so on point. I think that the person's comments were not that that they're not involved in any way, shape, or form with vendor products. That's not true. But to think that you need to start with a CISO or that all of the focus needs to be on a chief information security officer to make that decision is rather a bit of a misnomer. So why don't we jump into it here? So let's start first and foremost with just the volume of information that you as practicing chief information security officers that you have access to. Formats, devices, modes of content. You have articles. I'm sure you listen to interviews, podcasts, webinars, blogs, all of the above. Where do you like get your information? How are you just kind of like keeping yourself updated with what's going on in the industry, not necessarily focused on like vendor pitches or marketing, but just to keep yourselves educated and informed. What types of assets do you use to do that?
I'll jump in here. It's a combination, right, Michael and Vlad and Julie. For me, I don't stop, so it's nonstop. I use my ADD to my advantage. So I was just watching 60 Minutes yesterday on Sunday, and I'm reading between the lines on these companies that are doing some stuff in cyberverse that I thought was interesting. Then I go use LinkedIn or some other means to go and research that a little bit farther. So I do that a lot. The roundtables are wonderful to hear from colleagues and peers, and if they approach it in a good manner, and the vendor is maybe sponsoring it, and they're talking about it, but they're not talking to you about selling it. They're just talking to you about how their product fits that space or a gap that you're looking at. Sometimes I'll follow up on that. LinkedIn I use all the time to go and research with peers and colleagues what they're talking about. Posts that pop up in my network to understand a little more clarity on a product and how it's possibly meeting some objectives that we all seem to have or that we share. Subscriptions, the podcast, the post, conferences as well. So it's pretty much the traditional stuff that's been out there forever. But for me, I pull and piece from all of it. So there's not one particular method. But I would say for me personally, it's probably my conduit for most of it at some point will be through LinkedIn. It's kind of my trusted area. And Vlad mentioned that. So when we trust ourselves in there, I'm not into social media. It's the only thing I use. When I started in, I think 1999 or 2000 when it first came out, it wasn't social media. I wasn't talking about, hey, I'm going to the bathroom right now, or hey, I'm at Disneyland, check out this new ride. It was about work and networking and collaborating with folks, helping people get jobs, helping yourself find a job, talking about things that you're struggling with in your position with other people in those similar positions as well. Today, it's definitely a social media platform. So it gets problematic, as Vlad said, that I had to turn all my stuff off a couple of years ago too. So I can't keep up with it. I go in there, and then I'll be honest, the messaging in there is so out of control, just like email and text and voicemails, that I can't even go in and follow back up with you, Michael or Julie. It's out of control. You have to put it back up in the stack and say, hey, Mike, I was trying to ping you. I mentioned something to you a couple of weeks ago. I might have 2,000 messages to go through at that point. And it's not a very user-friendly message interface on LinkedIn. So it's been struggling, but that's kind of my main bread and butter is I use LinkedIn to kind of use that as my centralized method to get out and get more detailed information from talking with specific colleagues or vendors or people in conjunction with the roundtables, subscriptions, YouTube, watching public news channels, all that type of stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I remember in our lead up that you were talking about some like sort of local news that you had even referenced getting some information through. I thought that was an interesting one.
Yeah, local news, believe it or not, it's kind of weird because we're like OSINT, right? Open source intelligence. We're supposed to know everything going on. And when you see something in the local news, you're like, well, wait a minute, that could impact us. That's in the supply chain somewhere. Do they have access to our network? Do they send us emails? All those type of stuff. So it's kind of interesting. I always watch the local news just a little bit every night just to see if there's something going on that slipped through that doesn't get all the shiny attention that the big stuff like CrowdStrike does. I would say within a month, there's at least a couple things that pop up that either that night, that evening, or the following morning in Interior Huddle, I'm bringing it up and we're talking through it. And it has assisted us many times from a local news story of something we need to be aware of.
Very interesting. Good. And how about yourself, Vlad?
So in terms of the question of how do I keep myself educated, I have a lot of different venues, most of which Michael covered. I'll say I'm a big proponent of reading curated news on LinkedIn, meaning something that a fellow CISO connection especially posts with comments that will catch my eye. That's probably number one. And after that, I will say I do read articles in some of the popular security news articles. I do listen to podcasts occasionally. That hasn't been a few weeks, but normally I do try. I have about maybe up to 3 or 4 podcasts that I like. Additionally, what I found recently is the good old trusted Google app.
Hmm.
because since majority of search, and I use Gmail and things like that, right? Since Google knows my tastes at this point, right, for many years, it knows that I'm interested in certain type of, for example, technology news, specifically security technology use. So whatever I don't see on LinkedIn or specifically in some of the cybersecurity news sites, I do catch on my Google app. It's pretty interesting. And that's really my day to day, I would say. That's how I keep myself up to date.
Yeah, yeah. So some similar overlaps there, and you read my mind because I wanted to bring up Google and search engines as the next talking point. So we just covered, sort of like general keeping yourself informed and educated news, sort of day-to-day type items. But what about when it does come to um, evaluating, I almost want to say not necessarily specific products, but I don't know, zero trust was a major talking point. It still is, to a large degree, or you have new things coming out like pick any of the modern buzzwords. You have to start somewhere to understand what it all means. What is the role that search engines have in doing that? Like, are you using Google and the search engines to identify specific products? Are you looking to it to get more information on what a new product category is about? Do search engines even have a place in sort of like product identification? How do you put them to work for you?
You want to start, Vlad? You want me to take that
Yeah,
one?
yeah, I'll take it. So for me, traditionally, I would use Google, and I still do to an extent. Uh, but lately, I've actually been a big proponent or user of Perplexity, which is it's an AI search engine that's built on top of OpenAI ChatGPT. And what I find is it's not always accurate. You definitely need to understand where some of its faults are once in a while. But that particular product is able to conglomerate data from multiple locations and give it to you as an answer with references. And for example, it's able to get info out of Reddit, out of a lot of other traditional websites. It'll go to for example, you mentioned zero trust. Say you're looking for, what's the best zero trust solution. A product like Perplexity is able to go on the websites of these tools, of these products, grab some of the content, go into Reddit, look at the conversations people are having, and use a bunch of other websites and put all of this together into an answer format, and then allow you to kind of, in a ChatGPT style of usage, to continue to ask the product questions, right?
Hmm.
And get more and more granular in the particular topic. So I find that to be interesting, to a point where I've sat through demos of products, of security products specifically, where I will ask the whoever's giving me the demo a particular question capability. They may not know the answer. I'll go to either Perplexity or even Google, pose the question there, and I'll get an answer that kind of keeps the conversation going. It might not be 100% right, but it'll be in the right direction.
So you're saying that this utility, you're actually searching for answers. It sounds like in near real time while you're speaking with a representative from the company because they don't know how to answer your question.
Sometimes
Okay.
not, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's worked for me a few times,
Yeah.
and it's interesting when that happens.
Very, very interesting. How about yourself, Michael? Are you putting things like this to use, or?
Absolutely. So, you still got old school, right? Gartner and Kloss, and we can go use our subscriptions or the free stuff if you want to go out, look as a traditional CISO, go out to Gartner, see what they're saying, go out to the user groups, all that stuff. Kloss does a good job on some stuff. But I'm with Vlad. I am constantly using Gemini and Claude. There's some other proprietary AI tools I won't say out here, but I use those as well. And I got one open right now. So, I mean, it's nonstop. I told you I got a little ADD. So it's like, I need that information coming in. And you get better as you prompt and as you do things to understand things that might not be completely correct, as Vlad said, but you get better at it as you go. And it's a game changer for all of us. So I use it all the time on my phone. I use it, when my wife's not looking, I'm looking up something real quick. Constantly nonstop using AI tools to educate myself much more efficiently and quickly, and I'm able to measure it better. I can take screenshots. I can send an email off the information I need. I can make notes off of it to be able to bring that up into tier huddle discussions the next day. I constantly use it, but traditionally still Kloss, Gartner subscriptions. I go onto YouTube. I look for things like this that are down in the weeds, and I'm like, oh, I can learn something quickly. I might fast forward through a couple things, but I can get some information. Watching stuff on Ryan Montgomery and open source intelligence just last night was outstanding. Saved me hours of work. Was able to do it in 15, 20 minutes through watching some of his stuff. LinkedIn, once again, go out there and see what people are talking about it. The posts, as Vlad mentioned, are wonderful because you're getting real input. You could take the emotions aside, get away from the bureaucracy, get away from the finger pointing, get away from all the stuff, but look between the lines to see what's really relevant for me, whether I want to address further a platform or a tool that I'm interested in. So I do it all the time, but I would say the AI, Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, those type of environments are game changers for us to be able to get information quickly and process it in a way as we learn how to prompt better. We're all becoming prompt experts to benefit our day-to-day activities as a CISO.
I think that's interesting from the standpoint that it's AI is the tool that you use that is doing a great job consolidating all this information. But what I hear from both of you is that it's the quality and the value of real thought leadership information behind what's being aggregated and curated. So, for example, if they're going to Quora, if they're going to Reddit, podcasts where you're listening to real SMEs who have real life experience, it's actually true thought leadership, which is original thinking or firsthand experience that's being conveyed that has more credibility, that you can actually hear the value when it's done. So I would say that is the downfall of the AI use in vendor marketing, which we all want to leverage it as best we can for efficiency and and results. But if it's too generic, if it's following everybody else's playbook, if there's nothing really truly original in there, the value won't come through, and it will just be part of the noise. So we have to aim for things that are original, real experts, letting people speak a bit extemporaneously about what they know. That's where I think the value and the hook, into getting more attention and engagement actually sits.
I totally agree. I think, Julie, I think what's going to happen is a convergence of a further convergence, right, of this original content and thought together with the AI tools that we're already starting to use. Yeah, for example, I don't remember the website, but there is a product or site that is able to essentially give you answer, or it's able to use AI to give you answers on a particular podcast, right? So you can search a given podcast, whichever podcasts uploaded their content into this tool, and you're able to, through text, search the content of the podcast and ask the chat questions. So I think that's probably where a lot of the stuff is going to go. Where, for example, Cyber Theory may decide, unless you already have this in place, that you want to provide a chat bot where even our conversation today could be mined by one of your users or any of your users, really, so that they don't have to listen to a 45-minute session on this topic. Maybe they're interested to just ask questions of the chatbot, and then it'll spit out answers based on what we just discussed, right? So I think that's probably where a lot of the stuff is going. How people are going to be able to get to this content is the question. Is it going to be curated and Is it going to be available to the broad internet, or is it going to be, on a pay-per-view type of paper chat type of session, right? Basis like that. That I think is going to get worked out. But we see a lot of, I think there's a lot of value in saving people time. I think ultimately people use search engines and now these new LLM tools for saving time and becoming more productive. And I think this type of content that we're even doing today is going to be kind of included in that in that approach.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think specifically, everybody today, it's been such a short time really since, GPT took off, but I would venture to say that everybody here and our entire audience could look at something and probably within the first 2 or 3 seconds tell that it's AI generated. And that's not the point of, positive or negative. It might be AI generated, it might be valuable, and you'll still read it. But if it's literally regurgitating all of the, the lowest common denominator content, it's immediately identifiable and it will be passed over. So I think it's, again, it comes down to that real value, real original content, and things that matter, to you in your daily work. You know it when you see it. So
Yeah, I think as I'm listening here, I think the term that comes to mind is authenticity. I don't know if that captures all of it, but this to me represents a major paradigm shift. And I would look at Vlad and Michael as pretty advanced users in a general sense, but there's a strong constituency of marketers that are probably watching this right now that spend lots and lots of their budget on Google pay-per-clicks, for example, right? Thinking that that is the initial entry for someone to ask or research about a product or a new product category or some issue that they have going on. And what one of the issues is that that's easily manipulated, right? I mean, those exist. Google pay-per-click, Google paid search exists so that you can basically cut the line, right? You can cheat to a certain degree. You can manipulate your ad so that it's more or less attractive for your target audience. It's great to hear our constituents here saying that they're using different means, which in my mind means that you're looking for ways to bypass that manipulation and look for authentic content. I'm sure somebody's going to invent it one day. Maybe OpenAI is working on it right now, some kind of sponsored, listing or paid results or something along those lines. But for the time being, it seems like you could potentially get more authentic and less manipulated responses from something like a ChatGPT or other generative AI tool, as opposed to starting with a manipulated paid search ad. Caveat, we do offer Google paid search programs, so not saying that those are the end of the world or you shouldn't be doing it, but you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you weren't thinking about how your messaging is going to appear or not appear in generative AI tools moving forward. That's for sure.
True. But it is all about payoff. If you have a sponsored ad and you're offering something of value and the click is performed and then you get there and yes, this is what you want. Here's a webinar or here's a video of true experts or influencers or folks that, have an opinion that matters. The topic is good, then there's a nice, smooth, straight through processing. Everybody's happy. It's those that try to use the tools there to manipulate clicks without actually having the foundational delivery of value on the back end. So that's where you lose a lot of performance. You have to make sure that your paid search ads offer something real, it's of value, and then when they get the landing page, it has to follow all the way through. Yeah.
Great point. Great point. Yeah, and hopefully the AI tools will sort of do that for you to a certain degree. But let's talk about it though. So how does the need for something originate with you? right? Again, I'll go back to that point. I'm quite sure you two have way, way more things to do and worry about than, again, you're not setting hours a day aside to go through product demos or anything like that. So what is the phenomenon where things come to your attention? Like, how do you know that you need a new zero trust tool, or how do you know that you need a new attack surface management offering? What happens for you to sort of understand that and put something into motion with your team to investigate a new product or service? Michael, maybe you want to jump in.
Yeah, I'll jump in on right now. So we've got a Sysmon issue with Sysmon logging for our SOC, right? Sysmon is traditionally was kind of niche, years ago, but now it's used quite a bit for next generation security tools, and that's a logging type. People don't know that if there's sales guys on here, but it's like syslog.log, but it's Sysmon, and you get a lot of activities from the operating system, the kernel, and the applications and stuff running on that asset. And Citrix VDI, for some reason, seems to have some issues with Sysmon running. And that is a problematic, because if the IT teams want to disable that, as an example, then what does that mean to our security center if we don't have those eyes on glass where that Sysmon information is coming in? So those are the kind of things that happen to us, me and Vlad, all the time, all the CISOs out here. So it's really pretty much real world things. It could be a finding from a compliance finding. It could be an operational compliance or security incident that occurred that day, or is going on, or something is happening like CrowdStrike. And it usually drives us to go, okay, what do we got going on? What do we need to know about? What do we have? And so today's situation for us, it's like, well, what are other folks doing out there with Sysmon, right? If we were to go to CrowdStrike, we were to go to Symantec, we were going to go to some other platform to provide our SOC services, that's extreme. We're not just jumping around like that. But what are they doing? What tools are they using? Whether it's a Darktrace or whatever it is that maybe doesn't use Sysmon, but is it apples to apples? Are they getting the same insight on day-to-day activities that we currently get now using Sysmon, right? And how do you evaluate all that? So that just happened this morning. So we're kind of going through that, and that might lead to, tonight I'll probably do some research. The team will probably do a little bit of research. We'll probably rally tomorrow morning and come up with a game plan and provide at least a high level, not a full-blown full-blown risk assessment, but a semi brief to the CIO and say, here's what we see. We understand there's some operational performances happening in a Citrix VDI environment. They believe it's related to a security control. That's how we get pulled in, right? Sysmon. Here's what we think is happening. Here's all the things that we provide as an option, and we'll go from there. So those are things we're spinning up right now. And this happens to me and Vlad probably all the time. And so I would say findings, incidents that happen, things that we hear from other colleagues, and that can drive us to go look at, do we have something like that today? Right. So let's say we use the CIS top 20 and we're looking through that and we're going, okay, we covered all these checks and balances of the Gartner report or whatever. Do we have that tool? Do we have that coverage for that type of scenario that could occur? And then B, how well is it meeting objectives? Is it tied with our business objectives at the enterprise level or not? And then down in the technical levels, is it function as to be expected? And so that's kind of, for me, that's kind of how it happens. It happens all the time. And at a high level, as far as outside the day-to-day that drives a need to look at a software, either an existing platform or features that we don't have turned on with that existing platform. So that's another sales things for sales. They sold us Varonis, but we don't have half the stuff turned on. Or they sold us, a Mimecast tool or Sophos, but we haven't had the skill sets or the prioritization of the workload to move from the cookie cutter settings to whatever we need to do. So we're going to do that all the time. But outside of all that, I try to do prioritize meetings with vendors, and I'm 3 months out, so I do 3 a quarter. That's just on the surface. So that's outside of all this other stuff. I'll say, you know what? Could be a friend, could be Vlad, could be Julie, and Julie's like, man, I need to hold you, Mike. I got this awesome thing. I just went to this conference, or I just talked to this friend. I just left my company. I'm with a new company. I mean, we're colleagues, we're friends. Even that being so, we're so busy. It's like, okay, I'll put you on the list, but I'm 90 days out. So Julie would not be able to see me for 90 days unless it's absolutely something that we've got to address for the enterprise. And I'm going to see Julie in 90 days, even though we're colleagues or friends. So that's kind of how I do that. And I will say right now, I'm out 120 days. I'm not out 90 days right now. So it's exponentially growing. I'm meeting with a colleague today at lunch who I've known for a while, and they've been trying to get 20 minutes. Can we get 15 minutes? Can we get 30 minutes? This is in the cells. This is just, we just want to touch base. Let's see how you're doing, even those they're all kind of piled into that. So that's kind of how I'm doing it now. I try to do 3 a quarter. This is outside the day-to-day stuff, things that pop up. This is just brand new technology or a brand new introduction to somebody. So I'll let Vlad jump on that.
Thanks, Michael. So I agree with pretty much everything Michael said. I think on top of what Michael mentioned, a good way for me to assess new products or to become aware of new products and needs is actually attending some of these conferences, especially in venues where you can talk with colleagues. I'm a member of a number of these groups where you can, you're sitting around the table and people are discussing different, security challenges and IT challenges, and someone will say, well, what are you using for this? Or what are you using for that? Or are you aware of this problem? Or are you aware of that problem? And that kind of triggers a little something, right, in my mind sometimes that kind of allows me to relate what I'm hearing to my workplace and realize sometimes that, oh, we might not be looking at this, or we might not think this is important, but it actually is, right? And then that will essentially lead me to come back, talk to the team, try to understand whether, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only one who thinks that this topic is important, right? And that could lead to a particular interest in a technology or even specific vendor. But I would say that's probably 15% of the time. I think everything that Michael mentioned is that 85%, where you actually have a need, business comes to you, or you have a finding from a regulator or an audit that requires you to not just change the process, but also go and buy a product and pay for some service and so on. So.
Yeah, but both of you just gave a number of examples. A lot of it sounds organic, right? That things come up and you need to react to, and that sort of sets you off on a chain. The one thing that I didn't hear either of you state was somebody reached me on LinkedIn and told me I should look at a new product. Neither one of you mentioned that.
It's probably 2% for me.
2%, right? if that.
Yeah. It's down there, and LinkedIn's probably I don't even have my voicemails on anymore. Like Vlad said earlier, I can't manage my voicemails when 90% of them are sales pitches.
Yeah.
And, they throw out that stuff. Hey, we know you, or hey, I met you at the conference. I'm like, I didn't even attend the conference. I wasn't able to go. So how did you meet me there? It's just, I was talking to the CIO, I was talking to CISO, or throwing out people's names. I was talking to Julie. It's just crazy. Or I talked to you on LinkedIn. It's like my email for work is not associated with my LinkedIn account. So that's a red flag. So you're just losing credibility immediately. And it goes to spam immediately. And now you don't get a chance to talk to me anymore unless you meet me in person or something, because I've just blocked you forever. And so that's happening in voicemail. That's happening in emails, and then LinkedIn. Vlad, as mentioned, 2%. I'm probably about there too. That's just barely there anymore. And I've got colleagues that are dropping out of LinkedIn left and right. And I've thought about it too. I pulled way back. I'm not doing as much stuff out there as I used to do. It seems like I put myself out there for something, and then I get flooded with a bunch of sales calls and requests to meet. And there's a difference coming from another CISO or a CEO or the founder of a company versus some junior salesperson that's brand new and they're throwing their AI template at you. Hey, we're going to give you a free coffee cup, and I'm going to upgrade it to a bottle of whiskey or some wine if you just give me 15, 20 minutes. And as you mentioned earlier, Michael, that, we're CISOs. It's a different audience. They should know their audience, and we're not trying to be pompous or anything, but it's a different weight coming from a founder of a company, a CEO of a company, a board member, a chair of a company versus an analyst or a sales rep that's, blasting everybody they can to get some of your time.
The worst is, I was laughing, Michael reminded me, I do occasionally get these emails or LinkedIn messages offering me free AirPods, for example, for a 15-minute conversation. And I laugh because, firstly, I can't even accept these gifts, right? Just based on company policy. But beyond that, it's just ridiculous, right? It's like getting a job offer when you're, at a C-level position for you know, for something that maybe you've done 30 years ago, right? It's just people are not doing their research, and they don't understand, like Michael said, who they're even trying to reach, right? That it's just it's purely bad marketing, right? That to me is just ridiculous, right? That's an automatic delete. If you're offering me, you know, effectively bribes to talk to you, overt bribes, right? It's just ridiculous, right? Now, I will, however, entertain, you know, a good dinner, but not for the dinner, for the opportunity to actually meet other CISOs, right? And maybe even, you know, have a look at a good or interesting product. That to me is valuable. Networking is valuable. Thankfully, you know, AirPods is not, right?
Mm.
And I realize that, you know, I'm fortunate that that's the case. But the point is, you kind of need to, as a marketer, you need to understand who you're marketing to and what are they most likely going to be interested in. And I can tell you, I'm like, you know, I don't want to speak for Michael, but I'm interested in networking face to face. I'm not interested in, you know, pretty much anything else at this point.
Well, well, Vlad, that was actually my last talking point here, and then we'll wrap up. But was the value of events and sort of the type of events, and I think, you know, you've done a great job at narrowing that down. You're kind of focused on the round tables, the more intimate sessions where you can have that group think and camaraderie amongst peers. But you realize in the vast majority of those cases, they are underwritten, right? There is a sponsor that's attached to those. Somebody has to pay for the
Of
food and
course.
the logistics and to get everybody there. So what's the difference? What makes you, I don't want to say you're okay with that, right? The fact that there's going to be a sponsor, some kind of pitch there. What makes it okay in your mind, or it gives you the validation that it still would be something valuable for you to participate in?
I think specifically it's there's an actual value for me in meeting other colleagues and having
Mm.
that interaction, kind of like what we discussed earlier, where you can have an organic discussion about, you know, maybe the products that are being presented at the, let's say if it's a conference, or about other things that are not even you know, sponsored but are mentioned by your you know, by people you meet, right? Being able to go out and meet prospective employees or prospective employers, right? You never know what happens in this world, right? You know, I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm looking uh, for position, you know, for my company, right? For somebody to report to me, and I've gotten in an inadvertent a huge amount of resumes and calls and LinkedIn messages from folks that I've met at these conferences, right? That are reaching out to me now, asking me to take a look at their resume and see if they would be a fit. I would never be able to get that much attention if I haven't actually met a lot of these people in person, right? So that to me is valuable, and you know, the principle of reciprocity applies, right? Which means if I go to a conference and I'm, you know, meeting these people, then obviously I'm going to be inclined to at least have a conversation with a vendor, especially if I find that vendor to be interesting, right? Or maybe I'll pass the vendor on to somebody else. And if I happen to adopt a vendor and I think the product is good, I'm the number one evangelist. You don't even have to pay me, right? And there's a couple of vendors out there that know this. You know, I'll walk around the conference and I'll mention to everybody I meet, look, have you looked at these guys? They're over there, booth number one. They have an
Mm.
amazing product, right? And I've gotten you know, uh, emails from a couple of these vendors thanking me for, you know, driving traffic to them for nothing. I don't, you know, I don't need anything, right? But if I believe in the product, I have no problem recommending it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if, you know, if I'm getting something out of this from a you know, from the standpoint of not financial standpoint, but really even, you know, just meeting people, connecting to people, and finding out what people are doing in the industry and what the trends are.
No doubt. No doubt. I think it's that one-to-one interaction with peers where it's not necessarily common to go out and find a community of like-minded CISOs where you're sort of interacting with each other day in, day out. You're almost confined to some of these like executive sessions or conferences or events where everybody kind of comes together. How about yourself, Michael? How do you make that determination that you're going to attend like a roundtable, for example?
Sometimes a trial by error, right? Being Vlad Brenner on the block. Sometimes you go to these things and you think it's great, and then the forum is all hardcore sales. We're going to talk about stuff for 20 minutes, and then we're going to pull you aside for 10 and try to get you to buy our product. I can't stand those setups. I like open peer discussions, open conversations. I tend to find people for those platforms that are technical and just take them aside and say, hey, if I hired you on and you're coming to work with me and you're going to be the guru, you're going to be our champion, you're the man, you're the woman, you're it. I'm going to give you everything you need to be successful. What would you be doing with this tool? What would you be doing? So I love having that personal engagement, as Vlad said. Networking, I like cross-sector learning. So not just CISOs from healthcare, but CISOs from manufacturing, CISOs from federal agencies. I like all of it because they might be using something, doing something at a different angle that we just didn't think about from that perspective. So the collaboration in person is awesome. The ones that I tend to sign up for, once in a while I get hooked in. I'm not going to say anybody. I almost said one of the words that were from overseas. It sounded great. Lots of big names, all this stuff. A couple colleagues asked me if I was going. I go, and the whole thing was just sales, sales, sales. After the conference is over, constant sales. I need 15 minutes of your time. You got to pick 3 vendors that you have to meet with afterwards. And I spoke at their event. I'm thinking, so I spoke at your event, no strings attached. I'm a champion for you guys, pushing your committees out and your collaboration efforts out. And now I'm felt required to spend 15 minutes with 3 vendors. Right? I'm not gonna do anything with them ever again. Right? I don't need that. I don't have enough bandwidth to attend the ones that I enjoy going to and the collaborative efforts with those folks. So for me, it's the ones that it's, yes, there's a sponsor, but they have some tact on how they present their platform in that environment versus this constant sell stuff. And when they present it, I like it where it's kind of open. Yes, their logo's on there. Yes, we're talking, but they're not getting like with ISAC. I'm a member of a bunch of groups like that, Vlad said, internationally. So if it's ISACA, FBI InfraGard, ISA, ISC Squared, whatever we're doing, when we have a vendor come in, and I'll, like that, I'll champion a vendor and say, hey, there's a gig coming up in Seattle, it's in San Francisco, it's going to be ISA chapter. We need someone on Zero Trust, as Julie was mentioning earlier. We need someone on CASB solutions. You can go in there, but you can't come across as a salesperson. You need to come in there and talk about the issue and the solution as an option. And we can put the dots together to then want to say, hey, your platform might be the solution we want to look at. But they have to have tact and they have to know how to do it. And those are the ones that seem to be more successful, in my opinion, than me and my colleagues. And so I look forward to those. I follow up, as Vlad said, I'll champion as well. I don't ask for anything. If I believe in them and they're useful and they're helping us, I have no problem joining their committees if I have the bandwidth, championing them, attending as a guest speaker for a customer in the healthcare space or just as a CISO to come up and talk about how we use their product and what we do. So that's kind of my angle on all that. I definitely displease the frameworks where it's a sponsor, so we need you to talk to these 4 people through the conference. I just don't like those. I don't need to go to them. And especially if you're volunteering your time to sit on a round table or be a keynote speaker or something, and then still be asked to do those kind of things.
I think to editorialize a little bit, the marketers, and especially in tech, tend to look for the shortcut and forget about user experience, to forget that the best marketing is really about a value exchange and offering something to pull your target audience in versus push everything to them. And client after client, we see that if you cover the basics and do it right, invest the time, that tends to be what ends up working because you actually are bringing that value forward to your target audience. The shortcuts, the silver bullets, they just almost do more harm than good. So it's really important to consider your audience, know your audience, and make sure you're bringing something of value to them. Even more, one quick example, in our series here with Cyber Theory, we do have the registration process for these webinars on a one-by-one basis as we run them, but we're packaging up this series as the offering behind the gate now for our target audience. So we're not just giving one webinar, we're giving a series, and that's a higher value exchange that should be more of more interest and more engagement for our target audience, and they're worth it. They're worth that kind of value. So just an example.
And I think one thing I would come back to, I forget who said it, but it was the concept of true peer participating. So even though it could be sponsored or a vendor is involved, if there's a representative from the vendor company, ideally an internal C-level executive, a CIO or an internal CISO or a CTO, or depending on the company, perhaps even the CEO or founder, right? If they're at the same level and can speak to the same things that the rest of the panelists can, then it should hopefully lead to a much more valuable discussion, as opposed to a sales or marketer being, representing that company and constantly, kind of turning it into a sales pitch. And we run hundreds of these roundtables every year, and it's something that we're constantly trying to reinforce with our partners is other executives want to hear from their peers. They want to hear from other executives, not sales and marketing personas. So.
Well, I certainly appreciate this conversation. Nowadays I'm starting to get more and more on the other side of this equation. For example, I recently joined an advisory board for a risk management company called Polonium. And then they're a startup, and they're just about starting to get into this world of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
That I can, take some of these lessons that we discussed today and kind of help them navigate their sales strategy in the future as they, get a marketing budget going, so that they can properly reach their target audience instead of just some, AirPods related LinkedIn message.
Well, they're lucky to have somebody like you advising them.
Thank
So
you.
that's great. That's great. Well, listen, everybody, we're going to need to cut it off there for timing's sake. I hope our audience was listening, because I know from my point of view, you definitely dropped some very, very meaty, interesting nuggets. It may sound obvious to you, but I think it's going to help educate our various audiences today and those that are going to watch this on replay. So thank you once again, Vlad and Michael and Julie, my co-host. For everyone from Cyber Theory and Cyber Ed Board, thank you for watching, and don't miss the next session. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.